please subscribe and don't forget to press the bell icon to get notified whenever we upload a new video.
It's hard there outside the court for reporters, for the media trying to do their job. A crowd, mammoth crowd, they're supporters of both A. Raja as well as Moily. But let's go back across to
we should keep those
Rajiv Chandrasekhar.
No, I was just saying keep those pictures going.
We will keep those pictures alive, Lata. Yes, we will keep those pictures alive. But let's go across to Rajiv Chandrasekhar. Rajiv Chandrasekhar, this is clearly not what you were expecting. It has gone completely against the expectations that you had, as we had spoken late last night.
Oh yes, absolutely, and I'm shocked as much as most people who've been closely following this 2G scam from 2008 have. So I can only go by what the judge seems to have said, which is that the prosecution failed to prove its case. And as you know, in crimes and in the criminal justice system, there is an issue about a crime being committed and proving that in a court of law. So I suspect that the people who went out there to prosecute this crime didn't do the job that they could have done, or did the job poorly. So the judge is right, I presume, in saying that the prosecution couldn't prove its case.
Okay, Mr. Chandrasekhar, are you therefore saying that the CBI and the Enforcement Directorate have not presented the case properly, and there still stands a chance that in the High Court, where the ED is going to appeal, there is a good chance that this could be reversed?
Look, the large part of the prosecution of this case was done between 2012 and 2014, when the UPA government was in government. No, not that I'm alleging anything, but you must understand the charge sheet and the case that was filed and prosecuted to a large extent was prosecuted under a regime that was itself that was being tried. So there is a fair argument that can be made.
Mr. Chandrasekhar, that's a tad unfair. Yes. That's a tad unfair. It was under that regime
I said this.
that the special court was appointed.
I'm only stating the facts.
Yeah, it was under that regime.
I'm only stating the facts.
Yeah, there was judicial custody. A. Raja and Moily were taken into judicial custody under the same regime. A whole host of corporate bigwigs were taken under.
I am.
The special court was appointed.
No, Lata. Let me finish.
Yes.
I am responding to the point that the judge made, that the prosecution has failed to prove its case. I'm responding only to that point. I'm not making any other conspiratorial charges. That it is clear that to anybody who has followed this, that what was done was wrong. That is any other conspiratorial charges. That it is clear that to anybody who has followed this, that what was done was wrong. That is very clear. That is very obvious. The only point that is now being debated is, was there a criminal conspiracy? And if so, did the prosecution make the case? Yeah, did the prosecution make the case fairly in a court of law?
You're absolutely right. As we just heard there from Kapil Sibal, and we will replay that conversation that we just had. The judge seems to believe that the prosecution hasn't built the case for criminal conspiracy. Absolutely. Absolutely. Siddharth Luthra, just to take that point forward, Justice Saini seems to suggest that the prosecution has been unable to build a case suggesting there was criminal conspiracy. As we've heard right through this matter over the last several years, the UPA has said that was the stated policy. There was no corruption. That was the stated policy of the government at that point in time. Siddharth Luthra, how do you read this?
I'll tell you what, I think Mr. Chandrasekhar is being unfair and uncharitable in criticizing the prosecution. I think the prosecutors did their duty. The difficulty that we were faced with as accused, and I represented one of the accused, was that there was a lack of understanding at the investigation level as to the nature of the transaction. The problem today is your investigators are not equipped to understand technical transactions, and these are highly technical transactions, which the judge has obviously gone into a lot of depth with and understood that there seems to be no abuse of authority. Government largesse is going to be distributed. That is the way governments function. But that doesn't mean there's an abuse of authority. And I get Mr. Sibal's point, and I think I must concur that there is a finding that the prosecution case has not been proved. People have been exonerated today. And it is unlikely that the appeal will be a difficult task for the CBI or the ED. So the lesson to be taken is, and this is something which is a lesson which is long to be learned, that we can't prosecute people merely on suspicion. We can't prosecute people merely because we believe that something wrong has been done. The licenses cancellation is a separate issue. The Supreme Court done it. It's settled. I don't want to comment on it. But the fact is, it was not a case for criminal prosecution. I'm going to go to court now, so you'll excuse me. But this is my view, and I think it is unfair to blame anybody. But the fact is, we should be happy is that the session judge in Delhi, a special judge, has exonerated people, and that is an answer that our system is strong and good. Okay? Thank you.
All right, Mr. Luthra, appreciate you joining us, representing one of the accused. Rajiv Chandrasekhar, I'll give you an opportunity to respond to that, but let's very quickly listen to Kapil Sibal. He spoke exclusively to CNBC-TV18 right after the verdict. Let's listen into him, and Rajiv Chandrasekhar, I'm coming back to you.
There was no case. From the beginning, there was no case. In fact, it was a scam of lies. There was no scam on our part. We did it in accordance with the policy prescription that we had at that point in time. And I've been saying from day one that there was no loss, and I've been vindicated today. In fact, it is Vinod Rai who must apologize to the nation. It is the opposition that must apologize to the nation, because they sullied the name of the UPA on absolutely fictitious grounds. There never was a scam, and there was never any corruption in these issues. And it's been now clarified by a judgment of the court.
Well, that point is taken, Mr. Sibal. But, you know, the ED is already taking the case to the High Court. And even in previous instances, it was the Supreme Court that cancelled the licenses, sir.
That's wrongly, according to me, wrongly. And I've always said so. Okay. I have said so in writing.
Okay.
That was also a wrong decision. I mean, the fact that the Supreme Court rendered a decision doesn't mean it's necessarily right.
Okay.
In fact, the kind of environment that was created by the media, by the opposition, by Vinod Rai, and see what the telecom sector is the dire straits it is in today. And this is entirely because of Vinod Rai. It's entirely because of the opposition.
But Mr. Sibal, Mr. Sibal, if I may come in here, sir, the Supreme Court, while it cancelled those 122 licenses, said that the order, that the procedure followed by the government was capricious, against public interest, that they quashed the licenses because it felt that the entire process was illegal.
It is disproved. The first come, first served policy was there, and it is now disproved. There's nothing wrong with that policy. There was no corrupt act in that process. The judgment has now come. Don't repeat the falsehoods that were in the public domain. I mean, Supreme Court, whatever it did, in the best interest of the country that it did, but it could be wrong. And
Well, that is Kapil Sibal saying that the UPA stands vindicated. He personally stands vindicated, that they believe that it was a campaign that was built by the opposition. And of course, Mr. Sibal, they're asking the former CAG Vinod Rai to apologize. But the former Attorney General, Mr. Soli Sorabji, also joined us. Mr. Sorabji, thank you very much for joining us on CNBC TV18, sir. O.P. Saini, the judge of the special court, saying that the prosecution has been unable to provide credible evidence. All the accused now stand acquitted. Your first reaction, your first comment to the verdict that's come in the 2G case, sir?
Well, as
Mr. Sorabji, can you hear me,
principle of criminal jurisprudence, the prosecution was... Yes, I'm answering. It's the cardinal principle of criminal jurisprudence that the prosecution must establish the charges beyond reasonable doubt. In this case, the judges held that the prosecution has failed to do so. Now, I haven't read the judgment. I don't know on what basis it's done it. But the judge has obviously given effect to that principle. And that's a good thing, as for the time being. Of course, the matter will, I suppose, will be carried in appeal, and we'll have to see. So it's too early for anyone to say that Vinod Rai is to be blamed and we are vindicated. Don't speak so soon and so prematurely. The matter will go in appeal, and then we'll see what happens. In any case, at present, I haven't read the judgment. The people who make comments, I don't know whether they've read the judgment, only the conclusion. But in any case, the conclusion is there. It favors the accused, and as I said, it is in keeping with the cardinal principles of criminal jurisprudence that the prosecution must prove its charges beyond reasonable doubt, and the judges held that in this case the prosecution failed to do so. If that is so, of course the accused must be set free. But remember, the matter can go up in appeal to the High Court, and the High Court may or may not take a different view. All depends.
Sir. Yes, sir.
So it's too early to be very jubilant about it and blaming Vinod Rai and others.
Mr. Sorabji, indeed, the Enforcement Directorate has already announced that it will go on appeal to the High Court. But, sir, is it a weakened government or weakened investigative agency that goes to the High Court with this kind of a verdict behind the accused?
Well, High Court will not likely interfere with it, but they have a right to go up and appeal. Why not? If observations have been made against this, and they have a right to go and appeal. They have a right. How do you take that right away? Whether the High Court will accept the appeal or the High Court will confirm the finding of the trial court is a different matter, and we'll meet after that. It's too early to pronounce anything on that aspect now.
No, you're absolutely right, Mr. Sorabji. We are speaking without going through the details of the order. This is just the initial information that's coming in. But just on the issue of the appeals, because, you know, the lawyers of the accused that we've been speaking with seem to suggest that given this order, the moving an appeal at the appellate is going to be even harder. Would you agree, sir?
Frankly, without reading the judgment, I cannot really pronounce any definite opinion. All I can say for the time being is the reprieve for the accused. They have certainly succeeded, but the success or failure will depend on what the High Court will do. So again, I repeat, it's too premature to be jubilant or to be depressed. Either way.
Yes, and I think you're absolutely right, sir, when you say that let's not prematurely jump to conclusions. And I think it's easy for both sides involved, the opposition as well as the former ministers of the UPA government, who are reacting to the information that's coming in from the court. But Rajiv Chandrasekhar, on this point of whether it was a notional loss, how much was the loss? Let's look at the figure arrived at by the CAG, 1.76 lakh crores. In the charge sheet filed by the CBI, it's brought down to 31,000 crore rupees. You know, and this was the question that I raised yesterday when we were speaking on my panel ahead of this verdict. I mean, the difference is humongous. And perhaps here is one of the weaknesses where the prosecution has been unable to build its case. Yes, Rajiv, go ahead.
No, Shireen, so, you know, I heard Kapil Sibal speaking, then I heard the other lawyer speak, and I want to just respond to a couple of things there. First of all, I think we all have to accept that the Supreme Court ruled in 2010 that these licenses must be cancelled. Yeah. That there was wrongdoing has already been established by the Supreme Court. What we are now in the CBI court is about a case relating to the criminal conspiracy against the accused. Right. 6 or 7 people, including the corporate. Yeah. Now, there the court has ruled that the prosecution has failed to prove its case. Now, for Mr. Sibal, who's obviously very good at this, spinning something out of nothing, to argue that there has been no wrongdoing and he is justified and a zero loss theory of January 2010 is justified, is all shooting, like building castles in the sky. The December 2012 judgment of the Supreme Court, which cancelled the 122 licenses, is a judgment of the Supreme Court, the highest court in the land. It found wrongdoing and it forced the government to move to spectrum auctions. So let's just leave that there. Yes. In my opinion, as somebody who understands the sector a little bit more than Mr. Sibal or the lawyer, the fact that spectrums were to be auctioned and there was real value for the spectrums was an issue that the UPA government fought hard and long in trying to use the argument that it was a Vajpayee government policy of first come, first serve, that there was no auctions on the unified licenses, etc., etc. And every auction post that Supreme Court decision has truly discovered the value of the spectrum to be much more than the 1,500 crores that they were charging on, from these people standing in the Sanchar Bhavan line. So the fact that spectrum is valuable or coal is valuable is indisputable. You know, Mr. Sibal can go blue in the face and argue against Mr. Vinod Rai, but that these are public assets and no government of the day, whether it's Mr. Manmohan Singh or Mr. Narendra Modi or Mr. Vajpayee, have the right to give away these assets at discounted prices to their favorite businessmen is established in law by the Supreme Court.
You're absolutely right, and I think that is one of the key impacts that this 2G scam has had on governance in the way that we allocate natural resources, moving away from discretionary allocation to auctions to market-linked pricing. Mr. Sarabji, I know that you will not comment on the material sort of fine print of this case because we're still waiting to see the order, sir. But may I ask you what you think has been the biggest impact? Forget the verdict, but what has been the biggest impact, the biggest fallout of the 2G scam as we know it?
Yeah, it's a judgment which is liable to be taken in appeal, and it will all depend upon what the appellate to the High Court does it. So all this jubilation is short-lived for the time being.
Yes, that was Mr. Sarabji, that was Mr. A. Raja. They're trying to get a word in outside of court, being thronged by the media. Sorry, sir, we interrupted you. Please go ahead.
Yeah, of course, it's entitled to be happy about the verdict. But as I said, it's premature. For the present, they've been acquitted. They have right to feel happy about it. But please remember, there is an appeal to the High Court, and the High Court may take a different view. May. I haven't read the judgments, but may take a different view. So it's very premature to indulge in all this jubilation and to say that Vinod Rai was wrong. It's very unfair to say anything about a particular officer that way. I don't think that's correct. But in any case, we'll meet again after the High Court admits the appeal and makes any observations or allows the appeal.
Absolutely. The appeal process is already... Yes, so you're basically cautioning that let this not be seen as closure in the matter. We've already seen that the Enforcement Directorate is likely to appeal, and you're saying that it would be premature for anybody in this matter to assume that this is where this matter rests. Would that be accurate, sir?
Yeah.
All right, Mr. Sarabji, appreciate you joining us. Rajiv Chandrasekhar. Okay. Thanks very much for joining us, sir, with your quick comments on the 2G scam verdict. But Rajiv Chandrasekhar, let me come back to you now. And this process of appeal, etc., will, of course... Mr. Mukul Rohatgi, the former Attorney General. Sorry, Rajiv, I'll just come back to you. Mr. Rohatgi, thanks very much for joining us on CNBC-TV18. We're still awaiting the details of the order, sir, but on the face of it, Justice Saini suggesting that the prosecution has been unable to build a credible case and hence all the accused stand acquitted. Setback, sir?
Yeah, that's true, but as far as I'm concerned, I think the verdict is absolutely sound because there was no criminality involved in the allegations of CBI. The entire case turned around the interpretation of a particular clause, which was called Clause 8 of the bidding terms. Now, interpretation of a clause cannot lead to any criminality. And I was pretty sure that the acquittal would follow.
Mr. Rohatgi, if I may interrupt you, sir. You are now the former Attorney General, sir, but when you were Attorney General for this government, sir, this government has believed that there was criminal conspiracy, that this was a scam that was hatched by the UPA, but you're saying that you're clear that the CBI has not been able to establish any criminality.
I have no doubt about it. See, it doesn't matter whether Attorney General or not Attorney General. The case which was filed by CBI, as I said, turned only on interpretation of a particular clause. There is no question of any criminality. That's all.
Okay. Okay. If you can explain for the benefit, sorry, sir, just one very. That's the former Attorney General Mukul Rohatgi. Rajiv Chandrasekhar, how do you respond to that? That's the former Attorney General saying that he was absolutely certain that there was no criminality involved in this process. It was only an interpretation matter. And you're smiling.
What can I say? I wish he had said this when he was Attorney General. I wish he had made it clear to all of us that there was no criminality. It would have saved a lot of time and effort of a lot of people. No, but look, I'm not a criminal lawyer and I'm not a lawyer, so I can't keep swinging my views based on the briefs I get. I have consistently maintained from 2007 that there was something very wrong with the way spectrum was being handed out in this very, very arbitrary manner to companies that were making a lot of money out of that handout. And that process was wrong. I think Supreme Court concurred with it in 2012. And what was in the CBI court was who was responsible for the conspiracy of handing out the spectrum. Now, the CBI court has found that this prosecution hasn't been able to make a case of criminal conspiracy. The wrongdoing doesn't go away. Maybe the case needs to be made again to the High Court or whatever. I think the lawyers have to decide that. Unfortunately, in all my life, I've learned many things, but I haven't learned law as much as Mr. Rohatgi has or other lawyers have. So I can't comment on what the High Court will say.
Yes, I think we should both refrain from commenting on what the High Court may in fact do and where this appeal process will eventually lead us to. But Sanjay Kapoor, former CEO of Bharti Airtel, also with us. Sanjay, one thing is absolutely clear, that not only did this cause a massive political earthquake, it also changed the landscape of the telecom industry, forever. We saw a lot of the bloodletting taking place. We saw a lot of the weaker hands exit. There has been consolidation, which perhaps was brought on much earlier on account of this 2G case. How do you read the developments of the day, and what to your mind will you take away from this?
So Shireen, like Rajiv, I'm not a legal expert, and therefore, like any other citizen, I would say I respect the judgment given by the court. But having been in the helm of affairs at that time, all I can say is we ended up creating something which was very stupid and which was non-sustainable. Every circle had 12 or 13 operators who dived into the business without having a business case. The only motive was to probably make some capital gains in the short run. There couldn't have been any other motive. And we created an industry which was neither capable of investing into future nor sustaining itself. And therefore, what is the outcome? The outcome is the industry is back again to an oligopoly. All the people who are riding that bandwagon are all out. We've lost tons of money. Banks have lost tons of money. People have lost their jobs. We've not been able to build robust networks that are video grade and be competitive with the rest of the world. So what have we gained by all this? And I think we went through clear mayhem for so many years in this industry. And today the plight of this industry, with all the debt that has piled up, with the non-profitability, I think we owe a lot to those decisions. So, with the benefit of the hindsight, I think, this particular decision was responsible for a lot of what the industry has gone through over the past many years.
Yes, we have seen a massive shift and a massive change, and perhaps to some extent the kind of cleansing that that ought to have taken place, as Rajiv, you reminded us yesterday, that and Sanjay is alluding to that as well. I mean, a lot of some of these players who entered